Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to talk about PvP. The Project Resolve PTS concluded yesterday. There was a ton of stuff to try out, and if you've been out of the loop and you don't know what this new update coming to the Division 2 is including, I'll leave a link up in the top corner to the video I did breaking down all of that, so check it out. But when it came to the PTS, I dabbled in as many things as I could, but because of my interest in it and the volume of changes, PvP was definitely my biggest focus. I played as much of it as I could, and spoiler alert, I liked many of the things I saw, but not everything. So I took some time to reflect, gather my thoughts, organize things, and today I want to present my feedback on the PvP changes for Season 3 and Project Resolve. The number one most important thing to keep in mind as we head into this is these are just my thoughts and opinions. They are no more right or wrong than yours, and whether you agree or disagree with my takes, be sure to write your own thoughts below so that we can start a discussion and reach the best middle point possible. Also, a quick disclaimer about the background gameplay. I tried to get as much PTS footage as I could. There's a bit from the Dark Zone and there's a bit from Conflict that I did on stream, but the rate at which you were able to consistently find people to play against and test with in the PTS is definitely sporadic, so I don't have footage of like all the random encounters I had. So all that is to say, I will be interspersing this with gameplay from the live game and not the PTS. You can check which clips are from the PTS because of the little watermark they put up in the upper right corner. If you see that, it's PTS footage. If you don't, it's live game footage. But with all of that said, let's get into this. And to try and avoid making this video super long, I want to quickly just go over the stuff that I do like and then spend more time giving my thoughts and suggestions for what I think still needs work. The most positive change out of all of this, in my opinion, is the status effect rework. They basically did what I had prayed they would do for years. They didn't nerf their power, right? Rather, they just introduced fair mechanics and counterplay options. Whether it's disengaging from a fight to roll away and build up fire resistance, being able to move while you're shocked, these changes alone have already made the PvP that I played feel so much more organic and natural. It's amazing. Also, the removal of shade levels and expertise in Conflict. Now, it is a fair criticism to say that removing shade levels is kind of a headache due to now needing 2 copies of builds for the loss of crit stats, etc. Ultimately, however, I think it's a price that I'm willing to pay because, again, from what I played, it just feels so much better. Stats have pretty grossly inflated when it comes to PvP since expertise was introduced back in Season 9. So to knock down 30% plus weapon damage, lessen some of the crit and headshot values, etc., things just feel much more in check. And it retains, build creativity and power, but it also finally allows an avenue of PvP in this game to be somewhat more approachable for newcomers, which really hasn't been the case for years. So while yes, it would have been ideal to just never include expertise in PvP to begin with so that we now didn't have to be rolling back progression, we can't rewrite history. And between the new levels of approachability I think this gives Conflict in PvP in the game and the more balanced stat values and interactions, I think it's a great change. Stuff like Unbreakable got a small nerf, which has been lesser talked about, but hopefully that continues to move us away from that long-standing crutch that I think it is. The day this franchise ditches bonuses like that, and Nomad will be the day I can die happy. And on a similar note, we now have a form of instant armor kits, which adds a whole new dimension to combat. We'll talk about these more soon. Overall, my impression from the PTS is that Division 2 PvP finally feels like it has a bit of an identity. It's no longer just a shoot first or spam your skills and see who dies. Fights are extended, there's a back and forth to them that previously hasn't existed nearly as much, I don't think, so I'm excited. That said, not everything is perfect, and I want to spend the rest of the time going over the things that I think need further work and revisions. So I want to go through each major section here and end off with a kind of most pressing issues list, starting with the Dark Zone. The only change I really have anything to say about here is the gear lockout for rogues in the non-invaded DZ. I like that they're finally addressing gear swapping. It's been abused before, and it always has that risk side to it when adding new items. I'm just not the biggest fan of that balance mechanic being used as a disadvantage tool against rogues. In my opinion, it should just be a rule that whenever any player is not within a Dark Zone checkpoint or safe house, they can't swap loadouts or gear. Needing to commit to a loadout or playstyle should be an ideal when we talk about these zones that involve PvP, but that's just my view. Talking about Conflict, the big point of contention here is the new spawn turrets meant to help prevent spawn camping. Now, in fairness, they are not as egregious as I had feared. There's 1 per spawn, right, so it's no death gate where there's like 2 shooting you down if you try and run through towards the spawn, and it does take them a second to lock on. The problem, however, is that this is prone to be abused. In Domination, this would be fine, right, because if you run back into your spawn, the other team can then just take the objectives, rack up points, and they win. But in Skirmish, which in my opinion is unfortunately the more popular game mode within Conflict, a team could get a 3, 4, 5 life advantage, and then just run back into their own spawn, hide behind the turret, and win. It sounds lame, but never underestimate the Division PvP crowd, people will do it. And with the spawn debuff system still being in place in combination with the turrets, the losing team would have no recourse if that were to happen. The only way to counter it, I suppose, would be to abuse another glitch yourself, that being the fact that mortar turrets can shoot into enemy spawns despite the skill lockout, and I checked and this is unfortunately still present in the PTS. So I don't know what the perfect solution is. I still think having a set spawn flip timer on like a 60 to 90 second rotation could work, right? That would ensure consistent flips if a camp does occur, and it would also kind of make you watch your back more if people are regularly spawning on both sides of the map. The bottom line is more work is definitely needed here. Spawning overall, the mortar glitch, please give it some more thought. Let's then talk about the gameplay, sandbox, and mechanic changes. There's a lot. With all of the rebalancing they did, there's a lot I could talk about. There are 2 points, however, that I want to focus on that from what I saw, I think will be the most problematic items if no changes are made. The first is instant armor kits and efficient. Now, I'm all for the kits. Their introduction in the PTS gameplay felt very surreal as someone who played the Division 1 PvP a ton, but it is a fun new way to play. The problem is that if no changes are made, efficient will instantly become the new meta, if the functionality remains the same from launch as it was in PTS Phase 1. Now, I am under the belief that these instant kits were not meant to be impacted by what specialization you have equipped, which is what seems to be happening. So instead of the intended 25% flat value, it gets boosted, and then running efficient boosts it further, and you have the chance to get it back on every use. I suppose it doesn't really matter what their intention was. Here's my thoughts. I think these kits should be one flat value for every player, regardless of what specialization, talents, etc. you have on. Instead of 25%, however, because that's very minimal with Division 2's TTK, I say make them a 40% instant heal. And then if someone does want to run efficient, certainly it can still give you the chance to not consume the armor kit, but doing it that way I think would just be much cleaner. It offers a much more predictable approach to combat, compared to how it was in the PTS, where the vast majority of the PvP audience will sacrifice their chest talent in a heartbeat to get a 70% plus heal every 5 seconds and then become virtually unkillable. The second point, which is kind of related, armor regen. Now, armor regen can already be quite strong in the live game, like with the infamous and forever aggravating bonk builds. Well, those types of builds are about to become way stronger if no changes are made, given that you can now achieve a 7% armor regen loadout with the changes made to the Gila and Golan brand sets. Now, I don't have an inherent problem with armor regen. Once again, like status effects, if you want to heavily invest into something, it deserves to be strong. The problem, and it's one that has plagued the Division 2 and the franchise at large for years, is that tank and armor builds always find some way to still gain access to high amounts of damage. And in this case, the one that will become the most problematic is those bonk builds, which basically involve running full armor, regen, hazard protection, and running up to people and continually smacking them with a high melee damage shield bash. It sounds silly, but it's quite stupid even in the live game. So, with all of that said, I propose the following change. We don't have to nerf or weaken these new armor regen values from the brand sets unless Massive deems them too powerful in PvE as well, we don't know. Rather, let's give the stat itself a PvP multiplier. Similar to how all repair skills get a 0.5x multiplier for PvP, they're only half as effective. I propose that armor regen as a stat gets a 0.7x multiplier whenever you're inside the DZ or conflict. Right, that means you would still be able to get over a 100k armor regen setup with these new changes, but having that reduction should help shave the edge off of what will otherwise be a very noticeable outlier. So, those are my big points for every main PvP category. I did want to end off with a rapid fire list of the top PvP changes I think need to be made after PTS Phase 1. These are a combination of stuff we just covered and some other things. Number 1 is the conflict spawning. As I said, there is no perfect solution, but I think especially given how good the mode feels now with the removal of shade levels and expertise, it would be an immense shame if more work is not put into fixing the spawns up so that the mode is as good as it can be. Number 2, instant armor kits feel great in gunfights, but they do need a revision to their interaction with efficient to prevent the next instant meta from occurring. Number 3, armor regen will be crazy strong with these new changes. Let's implement a 0.7x multiplier in PvP on the stat to keep it in line. And then 2 other quick points that I didn't already cover, but they're just as relevant. Number 4, the Doctor Home was dominating every type of content in PTS 1, and the same will happen in PvP, and that's because they changed its proc condition to headshots, but they didn't give it a cooldown. So every time that you hit a headshot with that weapon, it automatically heals you and your entire team for 10% armor. So I propose that if the proc condition stays headshots, give it a 3 to 5 second cooldown, and that should fix it up. And then number 5, shotguns are pretty problematic in current PvP, and they were not really addressed by any of the changes within Project Resolve. Personally, I would consider tuning down their PvP damage multiplier. I think if you do that in combination with all of the changes that we're getting with Project Resolve, then there would be no notable outliers, at least heading into the update. Obviously, things will evolve over time, but I think that would be a really healthy change to make. And there you go, everybody. That is my breakdown and thoughts on Project Resolve's PvP, at least its presentation in PTS Phase 1. Overall, fantastic new changes and direction for PvP. The flow feels so much more natural. There are counterplay options, fights are extended, just really good stuff. That is why I'm so passionate about this, and I hope that these other issues can be addressed, because I think that this patch really has the potential to deliver the best PvP the Division 2 has ever seen, in my opinion. So, let's get to talking and make it happen. And that starts down below. Leave your thoughts on what you saw about PvP in Project Resolve PTS Phase 1. Do the points that I raised in this video resonate with you? Do you have a different viewpoint on it? Are there other things that you think are problematic and need changing? Whatever you're thinking, leave it all down below. I'm excited to read through it. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed, I would appreciate you hitting that like, subscribe, bell, all the good things. And that's all I've got for today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.